Last time on The Impact.
I don't know how to feel being in the hot seat because I'm never in the hot seat. A show that was focused on religion, covering these topics, and not only were you online, but you went to TV, and then Pakistan, you were there, and
Yes.
and it became a really big thing. I know, with the show, you also at the same time you were a gospel singer, and you're retired from the school district, and worked with young people,
Yeah.
and now you're doing work in the community and so many other things. So you're doing community work to help feed people, which is honorable.
Homeless on the street. As a teenager, I actually had to sleep on the ground. And I tried to find people to help me, and nobody would. So, with that being said, I ended up outdoors, and I had to steal food to eat.
The reason my heart is so big for that work is because of you. I want to know where your parents were.
There were some people that were supposed to be my parents, but they turned out to not be my parents. So when you ask me where my parents, I have to say I don't know where my parents are or where my parents were ever, because I've never actually met my biological parents, mother or father. So I was told by the people that raised me that I was born in Washington, D.C.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up all over the east side of the United States. They traveled a lot. So they raised me on the road, constantly going from city to city and state to state. And the thing of it is, they were supposedly, quote unquote, evangelists. I thought it was a horrible thing to do. I thought sex was just terrible. And so it took a long time, even when I became an adult, I still dealt with in my mind
The trauma.
the trauma of what I had gone through as a kid.
And on this episode,
And he was the first abuser because he used to just beat me up. And then he got in a lot of trouble and got, arrested and all that. So I ended up, I never gave up my search. My son's picture was one of the first children whose picture was on a milk cart. Never give up. I felt like committing suicide. I felt like giving up so many times over. Being a single mother, trying to raise my children on my own by myself, trying to find that right man to be in my life. But meanwhile, I still had to try to be a good example to you and your brother that I raised. Never give up. Times can be so hard sometimes, and you can feel like it's the end of the road. But just don't give up. Keep pushing through. Do what you gotta do to keep pushing through.
We'll be right back with Wyleaner, the Las Vegas Queen of Gospel. We're back with Wyleaner, my mother. Special guest today sharing how she was abducted, abused, and abandoned. We're gonna go deeper into her story about where her parents were and how she overcame. You went through quite a bit. I often tell people that my mother is the strongest woman I know. She's been through more than you could ever imagine, but those are things that I didn't know you've been through. You talk about that as a childhood trauma, and then you fast forward some years later,
5 years later at 15, and you had a child, my oldest brother, and that was a trauma, a
Yes.
traumatic situation for you, a huge trauma in your childhood. So what happened with your oldest child?
Well, here we go. 15 years old, I was with my quote unquote parents.
So what happened with your oldest son?
Well, 15 years old. That's how old I was when I met my first boyfriend. And it was in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And my quote unquote parents were working. And, you know, they did something with me that I probably would never have done with my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
They worked at night, and they told my boyfriend that they would like for him to come and sit with me at night while they go to work. Hello.
Right. That's something you don't do with teenagers.
No, I don't think so. You don't put an 18-year-old boy in the house. Well, yeah. Well, I don't know if you want to call him a boy or what, but you don't put an 18-year-old male in the house with a 15-year-old female and say, y'all just stay cool until we come back from work at night. So that's that's how it all began. And we were together every night for quite some time. And before I knew it, I was pregnant. And once I became pregnant, then she got angry. And so she told him to get away from here and don't ever come back. And it's like, okay, come on now. You're the one that told the boy, that he can come and stay here with your daughter, but now you're going to turn around when your daughter is pregnant by this guy, you're going to tell him to get out of here. And that's how it went. And so he was made to get away from me and never come back around me again. And then they took me away from that particular house and they gave me to some other people. And they had these people to watch over me for a while I was pregnant. And then at some point they came and got me from those people and took me to another person. But the people that they dropped me with when I was pregnant is who now I call my brothers and my sisters. And I hope my brother's watching and my sisters, this particular family, I call them my God family. This family actually fell in love with me.
This is the family that took you in.
Yes.
And became mom and dad for you later.
Yeah, exactly. They actually took me under their wing and they had kids. They had 3 boys and 2 girls in the house. And so we were all growing up together. But for some reason, my supposedly parents came and got me and they took me from them.
And these were the only people you had been left with who really
treated me with love and respect and care. They really literally treated me like I was one of their own children. And the kids, they just loved me. We were sisters and brothers. It was just all good. But they came and snatched me from them. And they took me and they gave me to another lady. This lady passed on. Her name was Mother Cunningham. Somehow the state took me away from her. Well, meanwhile, my so-called parents are gone somewhere because that's what they would do. They would drop me with people and they would go somewhere else. And oftentimes they would drop me and go find another place to live and come back and get me and take me to a new place to live.
So you ended up getting pregnant at 15. You're all over the place at this point. And fast forward, you have a child. I want to hear about where you were at that time and what happened when you had a child a year later after you had your child when we come back. We're back, and we were just hearing about where Wyleaner was when she had her 15-year-old. So take us back to that place. You had a child at 15 years old.
Yes, I had him in Charlotte, and then they came and got me, and they moved me to Madisonville, Kentucky. And when they moved me to Madisonville, Kentucky, we were trying to get along as family, and for some reason we couldn't get along, so I ended up moving out and getting my own little space. But she kept him all the time. It was a boy. I had a boy.
She meaning the woman you thought was your mother?
Yes.
Kept your son all the time?
Yes. And yeah, I had a boy, and his name was Antonio. And so she kept Antonio all the time. And I would go to work and I would go get Antonio, and she would insist that I give him back. So she wanted to cling to him. She was very clingy when it came to my son. And we argued about him a lot. But I still was respectful because I was taught to be respectful as mother, child. I was taught to be respectful. So I couldn't tell her how I really truly felt.
Right.
So one day she came to me, her and him came, Willie, they came to me and they said, Wyleaner, we're getting ready to go out of town and we want to know, can we take Antonio with us? And when we get where we're going, we'll call you so you'll know, and you can come and get him, or we'll come and bring him back to you. And so I'm like, where y'all going, Mama? Where you going, Daddy? We'll let you know when we get there. Well, it didn't sound strange to me because that's how they raised me. We did that. That's the way we lived. So it wasn't foreign for them to say, we'll call you when we get there.
Right.
So I trusted my quote unquote mother and father to go out of town with my son. And he had just turned a year old and he had just started walking. And they took off, and I never heard from them anymore.
Wow.
And from that point, that's when I became homeless, and I ended up sleeping on the streets. For 2 years, I cried. I had nightmares every night, wanting my baby back. I tried to get people. There was a lady in Madisonville, Kentucky that tried her best to help me to find my son. And she turned out to be somebody that really cared. She worked for the welfare office. She tried to help me find my son, and nobody was able to help me find my son. So I lived in Madisonville, Kentucky for 2 years, struggling on the streets and waiting for my mother and father to return. Not knowing where to find them, not knowing where they went. So from that point, then I met my next son's father, and he was the one that took me off of the streets. And I left Madisonville and went to Ohio. And that's when I had my next son. And 5 years later, I had you. And so...
And during all this time, you've had 2 other children.
Yes.
You actually, we didn't get into that, but you went through abuse in your marriage
yes.
with the one who took you, what you say, took you off the streets. And almost, took your life at the same time through physical abuse.
Well, in actuality, corrections, fall back a little bit. I was married before this one.
Mm-hmm.
My first marriage was to a Puerto Rican guy. That was my very first marriage. I married him right after I moved to Madisonville, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and he was the first abuser.
Mm-hmm.
Because he used to just beat me up. And then he got in a lot of trouble and got, arrested
Mm-hmm.
and all that. So I ended up married to him for those 2 years without knowing where he was, because he abandoned me as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I got a divorce from him, it was to marry my other son's father.
Mm-hmm. Who
Okay.
abused you as well.
As well, yeah.
So you've gone through 2 children, abusive marriages. Where is your oldest son during all of this?
I had no idea.
Mm.
My son was missing, but I had my son. I still search for him I had him registered with Missing Children's Network,
Mm-hmm.
Missing and Exploited Children,
Mm-hmm.
Hide and Seek Foundation, and then I came to Las Vegas because I was looking for my missing son.
Mm.
That's why I came here.
So when you came here, you learned that the people who raised you were living here, and so you came looking for him.
Yes.
Mhm.
I did some research and started trying to remember where I had been as a kid and who I was around,
Mhm.
and memories started to pop up in my head, and I found the man who lived here that was supposed to be my father. I found his brother
Mhm. Mhm.
by researching and trying to remember where they used to take me when I was a kid.
Mhm.
And it dawned on me that they took me down in South Carolina around the Nesbits.
Mhm.
And they used to tell me when I was a kid, say your name is Wyleaner Nesbitt when you're here. But when you leave, your name is Wyleaner Nelson, Nelson.
Mhm.
So I had 2 last names, but I was only allowed to use certain last names in certain locations.
Mhm.
So when I came here, it was because I found the Nesbits, and the Nesbits told me that his brother was here. And the brother's name was supposed to be Willie Nelson. That's what he raised me at. He raised me with the name Willie Nelson he was
Right.
using.
Mhm.
She was Olivia Nelson.
Mm.
But his brother said his name was Roy Lee Nesbitt.
Mm. So they had different names.
They
as
had
well.
different names. "20 long years it took me to find my son.
Yeah.
But I never gave up my search.
Mm-hmm.
I kept right on searching because he was in my heart. The whole 20 years he was in my heart.
Right. And you shared that with us growing up. I remember every birthday we celebrated of his in the hallway with his picture on the wall, the picture you thought was of
him. Yes.
And, you've just gone through a lot. You've not only had abusive relationships and abandonment and abduction, and you're still in search of your parents.
Yes.
Tell us one thing as we close out, how you believe you made it through all of that.
Well, I would say through the grace of the Heavenly Father
Mm-hmm.
has given me the strength. And I do believe that whoever my mother is, whoever she is, I believe that she was a strong woman too.
Mm-hmm.
She may even be still alive, because if I'm 64, she could very well be still alive and be like 84 or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
I believe my genes are strong.
They are.
And I believe that her genes were strong too.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. I'm just lost. I'm a lost child. I feel that I was stolen. My son was stolen by these people, and the same people stole me from my parents.
Mm.
I believe that's why they raised me on the road moving so much.
Right. And so when you've gone through all of these things, what is the one thing aside, you said the Heavenly Father. Is there anything else you would say to a young girl who may be experiencing the same thing?
Well, if I have to go back to, and you have, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this or not, but you have a book. Mm-hmm. And in your book, you asked me to share my story, 21 Days of Healing. Mm-hmm. I used a word in that story, never. Mm-hmm. That's what I say. Never, never give up. I felt like committing suicide. Mm-hmm. I felt like giving up so many times over. Being a single mother, trying to raise my children on my own by myself, trying to find that right man to be in my life. But meanwhile, I still had to try to be a good example to you and your brother that I raised. Right. Never give up. Mm-hmm. That's what I would say to any young lady in this world right now. Times can be so hard sometimes, and you can feel like it's the end of the road. Mm-hmm. But just don't give up. Mm-hmm. Keep pushing through. Do what you got to do to keep pushing through, because someday, if you just hang on and hold on and ask the Heavenly Father for strength, mm-hmm. you will persevere and you will come through. You will come through. I don't know how I've done it. So many people say, you should be sitting on the side of the road doing this. You know, how could you have gone through so much without being crazy? Well, I am a little crazy. I say so myself. But I'm still here, and I try to be strong. And so far, here I am. I'm a very strong woman. You're right. And look at you. You're strong. I'm so proud of you, Samantha. I don't know what else to say. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
It was a pleasure. And thank you for opening your heart to us.
That he will call me free and reach out for me again, forever spent in mercies.
Thank you so much for watching our show today. And as I always say, I encourage each of you to rise above setbacks, rise above trauma, rise above challenges so you can rise like the phoenix. Go be great. Sincerely, Samantha. No, zoom in, you're right. Because I'm back. Feel free to correct me, y'all. I'm not all the way here. Queen of Gospel, my mother. Thank you. Okay, cut. I messed up at the end. There was one more thing I wanted to say. All right, we're done.
All right. That was
You guys did great.
Thank you.
That was fascinating. That was an incredible story.
You made me cry during that.
It's your time. Time to choose yourself. It's your time to heal. Transform your relationships, manage your trauma, tackle challenges with boldness and grace. Break the stigma of mental health. Inner healing is yours through the 21 Days of Healing Journal, created by women and girls sharing their healing journeys with quotes to inspire you for each day. Order yours today to get your healing.